The Incredible Handyman by Sarah Jane Mackenzie. It was some time before Gareth Brooks achieved supernatural status, but from very early on in his life, he had determined that he was going to make it his business for everyone to be glad to see him. At about the age of 7, his mother, Serena Brooks, suffered a near collapse when her washing machine broke down just before Christmas. Dirty clothes started being piled up all over the spruce kitchen tiles. His mother even fell to crying out loud, like an infant. Under terrible pressure financially too, before she got notice of near help, and Gareth felt sure he himself would have gone into care and his mother would have been packed into a madhouse if she had not been awarded help that time. Gareth was so impressed by the way the washing machine repairman fixed everything up for her on emergency call out. How he came through the front door with his dark hair looking slick as though the door was slightly too narrow for him in his waterproof winter clothing, angling his shoulders to wriggle through the entrance, and larger than life, finally stood, magnificent, in the kitchen before unpacking his tools from his toolbox, which looked heavy, and performing the miracle that enabled his mother to take renewed heart in life and save the day. Gareth wanted everyone to be pleased to see him too when he grew up, wanted to perform fixing miracles for all. The very next Christmas, his mum bought Gareth a Meccano set. It was only a second-hand one, and though he was confused to some extent about how it might be applied when it came to mending things, since the various pieces all did belong to the Meccano, though some of them were muddled, and perhaps from various sets initially, he soon found that it did give him practice trying to envision how something might turn out, and also helped his hands get round to getting used to dealing with quite small bolts. He definitely enjoyed passing the time playing with it, in the hope that also he might definitely improve generally in the task of trying to solve various puzzles. His mum enjoyed watching him playing with it on the floor, which had been generously carpeted since the preceding year. That had been a wonderful blessing. It was so much nicer now, kneeling and playing in the living room. The carpet was quite thick, but his mum definitely vacuumed it quite often, and though some TV programmes, like Tomorrow's World, which were often on in the background of his consciousness, partly maybe so that the talking voices of the various characters would keep his mother company once seemed to set it up, that fresh and vac may have to be continually used to try and deal with carpeted areas, partly trying to indicate that they may sometimes get smelly or be affected by the damp in the room, which his mother did have a continual problem with, though they definitely tried to keep on top of it, and now also had a great electric fire, which even had a spinner under the top part of it, near a light bulb, so that it really was quite mesmerising watching it flicker. His mum did not necessarily think that carpets must be a bad thing and full of threatening germs. He was glad she didn't. They hadn't really got a great deal of furniture to move when the carpet fitter came, but even though they did not move the main settee into another room, and there had even been a table and a bookcase too, as well as the TV and the fire, the man managed to cut the edges off really neatly and to make sure it was all placed right with no odd lumps or bumps. It even had a pattern on it, and it was such a complicated pattern that if you were feeling a bit sad, it was really worth looking at and marvelling over. It was a swirly pattern mostly, but with a real variety of colours in it as well. His mum had that time made him go into the kitchen away from actually watching the carpet fitter at work. She had been worried that he might be in the way, she had said. It was some time later that Gareth realised that the carpet fitter man must surely have had someone else helping him fit the carpet in the living room. But whomever that was must have stayed very quiet, and he had not heard much of a kerfuffle from the kitchen or any slammings of the front door. Gareth's dad had died soon after he had been born, in a motorbike accident, his mum had told him, when she thought he might be old enough to be able to understand and process the information enough. He had been a young man to have been killed. It was not much later on that his mum got central heating installed. Serena had tried very hard indeed to combat the damp and had been advised that central heating might definitely help fix the situation. Gareth did not ask how she had afforded it, but it seemed great in many respects, as also sometimes his mum could dry things on the radiators. They still kept the electric fire too, and it was still lovely watching the spins of the delicate flywheel in the orange glow. When Gareth was about 9 years old, his mum gave him some money to spend in a local hardware shop and said that if he would be so kind, he might want to try and get hold of a couple of very small screws to fix the clasp on her musical jewellery box, which had somehow got into a broken state. There was a mirror in the box, and even a ballet dancer that turned round on a pedestal, and the mechanism of the little groove barrel, which a small piece of metal engaged with, was visible under a small glass plate. It played a lovely tune that hardly seemed possible without there having been anyone visible to play it, though it did take someone to wind the lever to control it at the back of the musical jewellery box. The clasps controlling the lid were delicate, and Gareth would also need a very small screwdriver as well as 2 small screws to be able to secure it again. Serena waited in a cafe nearby to the hardware shop in the middle of the town, and it was really the first time Gareth had been into a shop in town alone to look for something very specific to spend some money on. Although his mum was staying round the corner in the cafe, he felt slightly daunted in some respects. He was unsure whether to go to the counter to ask where such items would be. He thought that that was probably what his mother might have intended him to do, since she might be worrying a little, but decided that he did want to spend quite a while in the shop looking about also, with the challenge of trying to quest after exactly what he was looking for delayed somewhat, and partly left to the adventure of trying to locate the items somewhat. Someone might have told him to be careful lest he set up as a shoplifter. He knew that in his local newsagents they seemed purposely to have some sweets displayed for children right in front of the counter, where there was a worry that some children might later be accused of taking them from. He did actually think he might have located the exact item. A few of the small screws in transparent cellophane wrapping. He took out the small clasp from his pocket to try and estimate more exactly whether there would be a chance that they really were going to be able to mend the music box. He did not tear into the cellophane to check exactly, but just kept hoping that the screws would be right, and that the screwdriver he might find would be all right too. There seemed to be 2 main types of screwdriver generally, some with a cross on them and some a slightly plainer wedge. He had already heard of Phillips screwdrivers being the ones with a cross on them, but the small types of screwdrivers weren't identifying themselves as any brand at all. He could not quite see whether the screws were one or the other fit without taking them out of the packet, and he found that his mum had given him enough money for him to be able to buy both types of little screwdrivers. His mum was delighted when he had mostly guessed right, and they both liked it when the jewellery box was definitely mended. His mum had been given it as a birthday present once by her own mother, she had told him, though that grandma didn't visit them very much. She was still clearly in their thoughts. 20 years later, when Gareth had got very good at mending things, and when people had generally been pleased to see him normally, he one day received a surprise package through the post, addressed to him when he had not really been expecting a parcel at that time, with a letter within it claiming to be from an alien. The letter explained that the accompanying gadget was an alien device which allowed teleportation to occur to a human being if he was generally accepting the wish and need that he be teleported to offer specific help to someone in a situation that may be proving difficult. The letter also mentioned the Stickman computer game, known to humans at the time, whereby a specific item somewhat might be available to help with the matter, if it might be correctly guessed at. Gareth thought that might be somewhat like the case that might somewhat be prevailing at the time. It was seeming that to an extent spare parts for trying to mend things could to an extent be ordered from all around the globe. They were definitely calling the world the globe in that context. To an extent, it really was seeming quite miraculous that a replacement part could be ordered from halfway round the world, and that it would often only take a few days to arrive safely. Gareth was somewhat daunted, though. For someone to seemingly admit that they were an alien may have been some sort of practical joke intended to make fun of him and the situation by some prankster, or it might be true. But if it was true, it was still unusual for people to admit it. Moreover, the letter did not have an address or telephone number by which to contact the author of the letter by. So it would be to work through some agency? Perhaps for some agency that had identified itself as perhaps dangerous without properly knowing anything much at all about the character of the said alien or agency. Fortunately, he had opened the letter before he had unpacked the gadget. He decided at that time to go no further with unpacking the gadget and to try and quell any sense of curiosity about it for as long as might be possible, not to have to turn to it. He did not want to simply abandon the package or even take it to the local tipping area. He had even himself once played the Stickman game. It had involved drawing out items partly. He wanted to prevent anyone else in his household from accidentally coming across the item. When Gareth tore past the sewn-up bottom part of the sofa in the house 3 years later, he found the mysterious package with supposedly the teleportation gadget in it was still there. On exploring the package further, he found he would have to indicate his wish to try it and use it to the alien by pressing 3 white buttons on the side of it at once. He seriously did not know what the result of doing that would be. It could be that years afterwards he would be a fully established superhero. His own body might be all right with the teleportation process, or he might have a heart attack or something. In a way, there was a lot to lose if all did not go according to a plan that partly only the said alien must know of. It really was rather a strange looking gadget, shaped to fit in the hand and round like a tomato, but blue, with quite a few very small buttons on the outside of it, though the white buttons were behind a cover that was initially concealed. Gareth had opened it to reveal the secret compartment with the 3 white buttons, protected, therefore, somewhat from being pressed by accident by being internalized. But there were still some external buttons which might also be somewhat hazardous if caught and pressed down unintentionally. There was no explanation as to what those buttons were for. Presumably, Gareth would have to meet the alien first to discover what they were for. Gareth imagined providing tools to help people in all kinds of situations. He still did think that such a role would definitely suit him to some extent, above his normal daily work pattern of being an incredible handyman.